There's a trend right now in Europe of ditching American products. No Coca-Cola, no Oreos, no Philadelphia cream cheese. That's because the Trump administration is making it more expensive for Europe to sell things to the US, possibly hurting European businesses. Here in Germany, this many people said they'd rather not buy American products right now.
And Facebook and Reddit groups have reached hundreds of thousands of members in total.
In Denmark, where emotions are running especially high due to Trump's promise to take over Greenland, some supermarkets are even labeling European-made products so that people can avoid US brands more easily.
Result of Donald Trump's on-again, off-again, on-again trade war. These same American corporations are about to take another hit as massive boycotts begin for American products in Europe. Sweden is, of course, leading the charge here, and there are hundreds of thousands of Swedes that have joined into Facebook groups pledging to boycott all U.S. goods, or to the degree that they can. The boycott is specifically calling for boycotts of Tesla, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Nike, and Levi's. It's also urging people to stop using American services like Netflix, Google, and Airbnb.
If you're an American, is this good news or bad news that the rest of the world is hedging?
It's very bad news.
Why?
What you're watching is everybody all over the world hedging. Everybody is looking for alternatives. A lot of America's prosperity in the post-war period has been based on the fact that America was dominant in global trade. And, we make money out of our European relationships. Will U.S. goods go on being so valued? In Canada, they boycott U.S. products now. And actually, this was when I was in Denmark in February. I was shown an app that you can take a picture of a thing you see in the supermarket and it will tell you whether it's made in the United States. And if it's made in the United States, you don't buy it because they were so angry. And so a lot of, the prestige of American products, even the dominance of American tech, which a lot of Europeans have belatedly woken up to as a problem, could be in question. So Europeans are looking to do cloud storage in Europe and payment systems in Europe because, maybe the US is unreliable. And so we're just at the beginning of what could be quite a big change. And yes, Americans would feel that.
America First has cost the U.S. $21 billion just in 2025. If you did not know, we are being boycotted by the entire world. We are now losing at least $20 billion a year. But let me tell you what that means for the U.S. economy. Normally, we create about a couple 100,000 jobs just from tourism. The second thing is it stimulates thousands and thousands of jobs. For instance, like Las Vegas, the tourist industry is number one. So if the tourists are not coming here, you can imagine how that's going to affect the entire Las Vegas area. And yes, we are all interconnected globally and within our state, city, and the United States of America. Did you know that Canadians spend $20 billion alone? Just that group, they're the largest group every single year. That creates 150,000 jobs and stimulates thousands and thousands more. And right now they're boycotting us. They're boycotting us because of how horribly we have treated them. Somebody says to me, who treats Canadians horribly? And I agree, the nicest people in the world. But this is going to cost us money. And I want you to multiply that loss times 4. In addition, they're not buying our products. The U.S. is in very, very big trouble, ladies and gentlemen.
Overnight, I've received quite a few sneers and sniggers about my decision to boycott things made in the USA. Mainly, it seems, from Americans themselves, as this person has also noted. When you say those words, "you will make no difference," you say them to an Australian. And from gold miners' rebellions in Ballarat to futile fights on literal battlefields abroad, Australian history is endowed with noble defeats in futile battles. We almost take pride in their futility because it's in those moments that we demonstrate most clearly to our mates. In this case, Canada, Mexico, Europe, most of the rest of the non-USA world. However grim things look, whatever the overwhelming odds you face, you will not face them alone. When a Canadian looks over their shoulder, searching for the last person standing by their side, that person will be an Australian. And on a personal note, I have this standard. I will not be complicit in the tyranny of the USA. And this standard that lives in my mind now lives in the real world through my actions.
Canada stopped buying American goods, then beer, then vacations, then Europe joined in, then Asia. What started as a quiet Buy Canadian movement has turned into something the US economy has never seen before. A coordinated global consumer revolt, and MAGA voters, they are furious. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this happened, who's feeling the pain, and whether America's closest allies are now permanently rerouting away from the US economy. Let's get into it.
You wouldn't have gone on holiday to Nazi Germany, would you? You wouldn't have gone and spent your hard-earned money in a state that was actively committing a genocide, would you? You wouldn't have knowingly gone and spent your money and therefore supported an economy of a state that was knowingly committing human rights monstrosities, would you? How many countries has the US bombed in the last 12 months? Yemen, Somalia, Iran, Iraq, Syria. They've obviously massively funded the genocide in Palestine. They've kidnapped the Venezuelan president. Oh, they're kidnapping their own people on the streets and shooting people in the face if they dare to try and stop them. You want to go there?
Canadians are taking this boycott seriously. So I was up in Vancouver over the weekend, and we went out to a bar on Friday night. We went to the bartender to get some shots. My friend's not a big drinker, so he wanted something on the sweeter, and we ordered Washington apples. So the bartender goes to make it, and then he turns back around. He's like, "Ooh, sorry, I can't make that because I don't have the apple liqueur. It's made in the States, and we got rid of everything that's made in the States." And I look across the bar, didn't see any Tito's, didn't see some of the bigger name brands that I'm used to seeing at bars, and so I thought that was really interesting.
Before you would have come in and you would have taken these chips.
I used to take this one, but now, well, I took this one.
Across Europe, a quiet protest is playing out in supermarket aisles. American products left untouched. The hashtag Boycott Trump is gaining traction as Facebook groups rally Europeans to push back against US policies with their wallets. Michel joined a French group in March.
As long as we had aggressive policy of American administration, we want to make pressure to say, stop it.
His group even provides an app called De-Trumpify Yourself that lets consumers know if a company's funding traces back to the United States.
Fanta, I wonder if it is. So we just use the app and it says, yes, it's
American.
So American. Well, we'll try with that. We look like
this is a very French brand.
Very French, but sometimes we have surprised. Yes.
Good,
so,
we can buy it.
Okay.
But sometimes you get surprises because you find that a company that you thought was French has in fact been bought by an American group, and that's the point of the app.
Exactly.
One recent survey in France found that 6 out of 10 people support consumer boycotts of US goods. The poll also showed that the hardest hit American brands included Tesla, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Victoria's Secret. But it's not just products. Travel to the US from Europe is also down. In March, visits dropped 17% compared to the same time last year.
It's changed the way we travel. It's changed the way we consume. There's hesitation and fear about going to the United States.
Canadians aren't just annoyed. They are organized. Shoppers are reading labels, switching brands, and choosing domestic products in numbers that are actually moving markets. And what's striking is that this isn't being led by politicians. Ordinary people started it. It's not just individual shoppers making a statement. Businesses are quietly restructuring their supply chains, replacing American goods with Canadian or European alternatives. The shift is slow, but it's deliberate and it's spreading. The reaction from MAGA circles has ranged from dismissive to outright angry. Some are calling it a bluff, others are calling it economic war. But here's the thing, the data doesn't care about the commentary.
So Canada removed all American products from their shelves. Two could play at that game. Here's a list of Canadian products that are being sold in the United States that from this point on I will never purchase again. AgroPer, which offers a variety of cheeses and dairy products. Black Diamond, known for their cheese offerings. Daya, specializing in dairy-free alternatives. Lactantia, which offers butter and other dairy products, and the all-famous Cheese Whiz, which I don't know who in the world still eats that. Or what about their frozen desserts like ice cream or Chapman's ice cream? Or their baked goods and snacks like Voortman cookies or wafers? And let's not forget their famous David's tea, or even their plant-based products like Earth's Own. And I don't know who in the world has eaten these or will ever try to eat these.
I heard that Europeans were boycotting American products, and I'm not here to stop you doing that. I'm telling you that if you want to boycott American products properly, you're going to have to boycott Apple and Microsoft computers and embrace open source with Linux. You're going to have to ditch your Apple iPhones and go get yourself something like a Fairphone and install EOS and de-Google it completely. If you have a Pixel phone already, consider installing Graphene OS. You're going to have to really step away from a lot of American companies.
What began in Canada is now showing up in Europe, in Asia, and across global trade conversations. America's allies are not just watching. Some of them are quietly making the same calculations Canada already made. Behind all the political noise, real people are doing the maths. Farmers losing export contracts, small businesses absorbing higher input costs, workers in tariff-affected industries watching their margins shrink. The numbers are starting to tell a story that is harder to spin.
Canada's boycott on U.S. goods was a major shift that is being felt around the world. One of the downsides to this Canadian boycott of U.S. goods is the fact that the Quebecians are wanting to join in and work with the Canadians. And if you didn't know, let me spill some tea for you. The Quebecians have tried to alienate and separate themselves from the Canadian people for decades. They've actually tried to secede out of and annex out of the Canadian country and be their own little country all unto their own. And there's a lot of Canadians who would have been very happy and would have given the old drop kick to make it happen, but politics is ruled out. So I'm just wondering, how bad does the Tangerine Man have to be when two people or groups of people that hated each other for years are now working in unison just to boycott the United States goods, services, and the nation as a whole?
App that helps people avoid American products just became the #1 download in Denmark this week, ranked above ChatGPT. In Canada, shoppers are turning US products upside down on store shelves so other customers can spot and avoid them. Norway stopped supplying fuel to US Navy ships. France is canceling Tesla orders. And this isn't fringe activism from a few angry consumers. This is a coordinated, technologically enabled boycott movement spreading across America's closest allies, backed by apps, government officials, and unprecedented public support.
Let's talk about what is actually happening here and why it matters more than most people realize. When the US introduced sweeping tariffs, targeting not just China but Canada, Mexico, the key European partners, the assumption from the MAGA policy camp was that allies would absorb the heat and stay quiet. The assumption was wrong. Canada responded fast, not with matching tariffs alone, though those came too, but with something more organic and arguably more powerful, a cultural shift in consumer behavior. Canadians began actively avoiding American products. Grocery stores reported surges in demand for domestic brands. Tourism to the US dropped. Cross-border shopping trips declined. Canadian businesses began rerouting supply chains that had run through the US for decades. This was not a government campaign. It was grassroots. And that is exactly what made it so hard for US commentators to dismiss or negotiate away. Consumer boycotts usually fizzle out. People make noise online, buy the American product anyway, and move on. This one didn't follow that pattern. And here's why. The tariffs gave Canadians a concrete, daily reason to stay angry. Every time a Canadian consumer saw a price rise at the supermarket or heard a news story about a Canadian industry being targeted, the motivation to buy Canadian was refreshed. The boycott had a built-in renewal mechanism that most boycotts don't have. Add to that the identity dimension. For many Canadians, this wasn't just about economics. It was about sovereignty, about being treated as a partner versus being treated as a subordinate. The emotional fuel behind the movement runs deeper than trade policy, and that depth is what has given it staying power. Here's where things get genuinely significant. Canada is not a small or isolated economy. It is one of America's largest trading partners, deeply embedded in North American supply chains. When Canada starts rerouting, the effects are felt across industries: automotive, agriculture, energy, manufacturing, retail. But beyond Canada, Other US allies began watching closely, and some began drawing their own conclusions. In Europe, the reimposition of US tariffs reignited debates about strategic economy. The idea that European economies need to reduce their dependence on the US not just for security, but for trade and technology. The EU began accelerating trade negotiations with non-US partners. Consumer sentiment in several European countries shifted measurably against American brands. In Asia, key economies that had been walking a careful line between Washington and Beijing found themselves with new reasons to diversify away from US trade dependency. The MAGA framing on tariffs is built on a specific economic theory that tariffs protect American jobs, rebuild domestic manufacturing, and force trading partners to capitulate and offer better deals. There is a version of that argument that has some economic merit. Targeted strategic tariffs in specific sectors can create leverage. They have been used effectively by governments across the political spectrum, including by the Obama administration. But what the MAGA tariff policy got fundamentally wrong was the relationship between leverage and trust. Tariffs used against rivals create leverage. Tariffs used against allies create resentment, and resentment, it turns out, has a very long economic memory. Canada is not going to forget this. The countries that have been on the receiving end of broad US tariffs in recent years are not just adjusting their trade flows, they are adjusting their long-term strategic thinking about how much they want to depend on the US economy. And that is a consequence that lasts well beyond any single election cycle or policy reversal. And here's the part that often gets buried in the political commentary. American workers and businesses are not insulated from this. Farmers who depend on Canadian and European export markets have already felt the impact of retaliatory tariffs. Manufacturers who rely on Canadian steel, aluminum, or component parts have faced higher input costs. Retailers have passed those costs on to consumers. The inflation story in the US is not entirely about tariffs, but tariffs are a meaningful part of it. The people who are told tariffs would protect their jobs and lower their costs are in many cases paying more and selling less. That gap between the promise and the reality is where a lot of the political frustration is currently living, on both sides. And here's what this moment actually represents: the beginning of a serious stress test for US economic influence. For decades, the US has operated with the assumption that its economic gravity is strong enough to absorb almost any policy mistake, that allies would stay close, supply chains would stay US-centric, and the dollar's dominance would cushion any fallout. The assumption is being challenged, not because the US is suddenly weak, it isn't, but because the rest of the world has spent the last several years quietly building alternatives, alternative payment systems, alternative trade routes, alternative supply chains, and now for the first time, those alternatives are being actively chosen, not out of necessity, but out of preference.
To all the countries around the world that supply America with their goods, you know, from their clothing to their food, to their vehicles, to their electronics, how about we boycott America for a few weeks? Stop sending stuff over there. You know, they have no production over there in America, so let's just see if we can teach them a lesson.
So what do you all think?
Just a thought.
Is this a permanent break or a temporary rough patch that gets smoothed over with a new trade deal? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I would love to keep this discussion going. Otherwise, that's it from me. I also have another video specifically tailored for you. And if you enjoy such kind of content, please click up here and enjoy. Also, consider subscribing, liking and sharing because it helps me grow my channel and helps YouTube recommend this video to a wider audience. But for now, thank you so much for watching. And until the next time, the Joy Report out.